actually, I'd like to hear what all of you, I mean, you hear people say it all the time. I'd like to hear what specific things all of you do to get unstuck.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
just in writing, not editing, but in
Yeah.
writing.
That's such a huge question. It's asked so many times. Everywhere I go, any groups, it's everywhere. And yeah, I have nothing to say
For the writing,
because
I
I'm
signed up for the
there.
writing sprint this afternoon just because I thought, well, if I go to the sprint, it'll be like, well, they're writing, so I guess I better write.
So writing sprint, buddying up, accountability, getting somebody to create accountability. Another thing that I've always counseled is try and actually identify the source of the block. It if it's I want to start something new, I have all of these ideas, I don't know which one is viable, then actually you're doing writing if you go through a series of looking at each idea and seeing what would make it viable or not viable. So there's a process, but by engaging in that process, you're essentially writing again.
No,
And
that's true.
but the writing sprints. But the other thing is, if it's a current project and you're like,
I don't know. I don't know where to go with that.
I don't know where to go with it. My character seemed to have written me into a corner and stuff like that. Happens a lot to pantsers,
Right.
but it even happens to plotters because you can
I'm
plot.
a plotter.
You can plot, and the next scene, like somehow it doesn't feel like it's organic anymore. It feels like it's manufactured. So you start treating it, and that becomes the block. So what you need to do is probably figure out what is it about the next scene that is out of character, or what is it about the next scene or the last scene you wrote that took the character out of character, or took the situation away from where you thought it was. And again, investigating the story itself and its components to see which one took you into a box canyon.
Well, I'll tell you what happened to me just real quick. I had come up with this idea to do this Christmas romance, contemporary, and I'd written sort of this set of scenes for my creative writing class last year. That, again, my second book is coming out of something I wrote from that class, and which, hey, it is what it is. And I have other ideas too, but I'm just trying to. So I had these pieces. I decided it was written in third person. I want to write it in dual POV, male, female. And so I changed the first chapter into first person, which was fantastic because I could just really describe what was going on better because I was her. And so I loved it. And I had never written for first. Well, I did for an exercise in the class, but so I was really excited. And then I have this other chapter where she goes out on these dates because that was part of the original piece I wrote. But I really need this intervening chapter. This is where I'm getting to, where it's Sylvie. That's my main female character. Her name's Sylvie. Her name's really Anna Sylvester because she's from Birmingham, Alabama, and you have long double names in the South. And so I am sort of like the chapter in my outline is about Sylvie, and she's telling you a little bit about her and everything. And I wrote one paragraph about her work, like why she was in Richmond, and because that was sort of how the first chapter kind of focused on. That was snowing, and it never snows in Richmond, rarely snows, that kind of thing. And then I got interrupted. I couldn't continue anymore, and so that was like 2 days ago, and I've written zippity doodah about it. I think my problem it literally just came to me while you were talking. I was really listening to you, but I have a wide corpus callosum that allows me to think on multiple things at the same time because I'm a woman, and that's why women can multitask better than men. And I actually studied this when I was in grad school, but I actually haven't written her entire character profile. because I had written that whole thing back in the class, and then I would just came into it working on the outline and then flipping that first person of that first into first person, that first chapter. Even though I have a decent outline, I really haven't done all my pre-work. And I suppose if I sat down and wrote my character profile, that chapter would not be hard to write. Maybe I'll write that during the sprint today. And on the main male character as well.
Yeah. Hey, Julie, can I throw out something kind of random?
Yeah.
And this is totally a me thing. So if this is not a you thing, then feel free to disregard. But I feel like the stuff that is the hardest for me to write is often the stuff that I end up cutting later because it's the least essential.
Yeah.
And so, and as you were talking, you were saying that you were going to do like almost like a biographical chapter about her. It almost makes me wonder if that would be something that you would end up maybe later weaving through the story and then saying, I didn't really need this as like a standalone chapter. Just a thought.
And actually it's kind of funny because part of her biographical stuff is in the chapter with the dates, because one of the dates, the first guy, she goes on 3 dates on this weekend that she met online, and then she picks one. But your baby has grown so much.
Yeah.
She's waving. I had to turn on
Hey,
video
sweetie.
because she wanted to wave to everybody.
But look at those eyes. She's lovely.
So beautiful.
One of the guys, the first guy that shows up at this place, she goes, Timmy Brown or whatever his name is, and he looks at her, and they dated in high school in Alabama. And then he ends up being her first date at this restaurant. And so some of her history some of it comes in there because she talks about she was a cheerleader, he was a football player, he was a nobody, but she plucked him out of the football team and he was hers, and that kind of thing. And so I gosh, Sasha, I bet you're right. I just don't need this.
But the thing
I need
is,
to
you do need to write it. One of the things I think a lot of writers are concerned with is overwriting. But an awful lot of what you do to plan for a story never ends up in the story.
Sure.
You do this character profile, and whether you choose to do it as a scene, meeting an old boyfriend, meeting an ex-boyfriend, those types of things, and creating the background information in that, you're still getting to know the character, and this gives you their voice in your head, gives you their emotions in your head, gives their motivations in your head. And so knowing this, you can understand why the character makes this choice later on. And maybe because of this entire scene, you get one line of explanation next to that motivation later on. But you've justified it. You've written it out. You understand why that works that way. And it's the same sort of thing where you, and I'm going to be really weird and generic here, but you have a character who's a serial killer. Okay. He fixates on blonde, blue-eyed women who are over 6 feet tall because as a child or as a young teenage boy, he was turned down by the tall, blue-eyed blonde girl in school, and she made fun of him, and he feels emasculated. So he's transferred this to every blue-eyed blonde he's ever met who's tall. He gets this emasculated feeling. You could write the whole childhood scene, sort of, and now you know it, but it boils down to the note on the profiler's page: fixates on blue-eyed blondes over 6 feet tall. You know why, but the profiler picks up on the facts.
Got it.
In the immediate moment, and that's all that's necessary for the story to go forward. But if you hadn't written that earlier scene, even though it'll never see another reader's eyes, if you hadn't written that other scene, you wouldn't actually understand the complexity, because you are going to have to write a scene with him and his most recent obsession and having a conversation. And that conversation is not going to be, I hate you because you're a blue-eyed blonde. He's going to fantasize and call her Jessica. You know,
Right.
and you're going to know why he called her Jessica. But in the moment of the scene, it's going to inform why. So you heard him talk to the threatened girl in your head, because you knew what that earlier scene, that earlier moment in his life was. You know, why is a character calmed by looking at candlelight? Do you know that scene? Do you know why that happens? Is, you know, some people can meditate by looking at a candle. Some people, the candle, the fire, the flame is actually a disturbing concept. You learn to know that because of how they responded to fire or flame or issue, you know, back in their childhood. But so you get some new age character whose new yogi says, focus on this flame. I can't do that. I can't do that. You know why the character can't do that, but you don't need to spend the 25 pages explaining that earlier.
Telling about the house fire when he was 3 or whatever. Yeah. Got it. Okay. Yeah. That both of those two things are, I mean, I think that the fact that I haven't written her profile and the fact that I probably don't need to write a boring info dump chapter, because apparently that was what it was going to feel like. So,
but I don't see any reason why for a writing sprint you couldn't spend the time doing it.
Yeah.
Because I think on the other end of it, it'll be invaluable what you have learned about your character.
Yes. Okay. Great. Thank you.
So,
all right. End of my